So Sylvia Mascariello is the Program Director for Liberty Community Services, which is an AIDS and homeless services organization in New Haven, Connecticut. Her career spans over 35 years, and she started as the director of the high school equivalency testing program for the state of Connecticut. And from that starting point, her professional journey has been focused on the development and innovation of service delivery systems to vulnerable populations. She has worked with many different types of vulnerable populations, but she has done a lot of work with the HIV/AIDS and homeless community. Since 1981, she has worked for private nonprofit organizations and has overseen statewide initiatives to create pathways to economic self-sufficiency, optimal independent functioning and health, and assumption of citizenship roles in the community and stable housing for a wide range of people and families. Most recently, her efforts have been directed to the integration of housing and healthcare for people who are or have experienced chronic homelessness, with a specific emphasis on HIV/AIDS, serious mental illness, and addiction. Sylvia is going to be presenting about the shared housing model, and we're very excited to have her here. So Sylvia, if you'd like to take the lead, thank you.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? If you want to write a note, let me know. Thanks, Dee. Okay, there's a little bit of a representation that I can be heard, so that's good. I'm going to start progressing with the slides, and I wanted to give you a sense of the context. We're really going to focus on shared housing today, but I am going to start with the larger picture and drill down to shared housing, if that's okay. Every once in a while, when you see at the bottom of a slide the word other, I'm probably going to be wanting to hear from you guys what your experiences have been and what your suggestions are. So as you can see, obviously we start with that just like human beings, one size doesn't fit all. And the people that we serve could conceivably be using many different types of housing models, like a medical model, a nursing home, or a board and care, depending upon the level of the acuity of their condition and what's happening in their lives, or the chronicity, of their condition. Permanent supportive housing, a very high-end response to homelessness, which includes housing plus case management. You all know this. I'm preaching to the choir. Sorry. Rapid rehousing, which is a front-end support to get people from homelessness to housing. It is not long-term subsidy. And then there's non-subsidized affordable housing, which we're going to be focusing on here. Affordable rentals, which I'm imagining you're not seeing a lot of them these days. Shared housing, which we're going to focus on. Then there's rooming houses, sober houses, faith-based housing, different types of things like that. Anybody think of anything I missed that doesn't fit in one of those general categories?
You can press star six to unmute your line.
Or drop a note. And just so you know, Alex guided me to give about 10 to 15 seconds if I ask a question. So if I don't hear something in 10 to 15 seconds or see a note, I'll keep moving. ALF, can you type out what that stands? Oh, assisted living, yes. I thought about that driving in today that I should have said that. Is that what you're referring to, River Region? Exactly, yes. And assisted living kind of fits a little bit between medical model and permanent supportive housing. It is housing that has a medical support system and other types of support system, typically on site, that respond to the level the person needs. Oh, and domestic violence housing, yes, which is subsidized housing for folks like Section 8, and then there's all the other types of subsidized housing. But let's drill into shared housing at this point, because that is the area that we're looking for. For us, we are finding, as I'm sure all of you are, that the standard for eligibility for permanent supportive housing doesn't often match or always match the people that we serve, since the chronic homelessness definition includes that a person has been homeless according to HUD standards for 1 year solid, living in either an emergency shelter or in a place unfit for human habitation, or has had 4 such episodes that are probably 7 to 15 days long or more, depending upon the community, over the last 3 years, and it has to be documented. The person also has to have a documented disability. So we sometimes have trouble with the homelessness part because we serve people, all of us I think typically, serve people who are homeless but not necessarily chronic. When we have found that people can't make it, we thought, what could they do? And our first foray into this at Liberty was with a brother and sister who both had income. One had disability income, was the person we served, and one was a person who was working at a minimum wage job. And Sarah Lafredo, who's on the call right now too, actually worked that very, very hard to find affordable housing for them and set up leases and all that to get folks housed. And we thought, geez, we have to do this more. So at Liberty, that was our first foray, and that was about 3 years ago with one of our M Health clients, which is a person served under this grant. So I'm just going to go back again a little bit, and it kind of looks at, I'm sure if you discussed all this yesterday, I'm just going to go through it quickly. But when you're starting with the housing, you meet with the person, obviously, to narrow the housing search to determine compatibility with different types. A lot of our folks want to live alone, but they might not be able to, so you have to do some negotiating because they can't necessarily afford it if they're not eligible for a subsidy. So we also need to figure out if they are planning to live with someone and figure out how to match them with services. Where's their support system? You guys all know this. What's their criminal background? If the person is on the sex offender registry, that's what we call it in Connecticut. I imagine every state has some sort of a registry. I don't know if it's all called that. But if the person is on that, it's something to know. Their criminal background is something to have a good grip on because we have to present in a way to find housing and negotiate with landlords because landlords do criminal background checks. If the person is on the registry, that can become a significant barrier. However, we have not found that to be insurmountable with the exception of patterns of violent offenses, and that would go for any patterns of violent offenses, sexual or otherwise. What's the person's income, and are we going to help the person get more income, which we have to, or more benefits, non-cash benefits, which we have to? What's their subsidy? What are the limitations of their subsidies? What do they have one-time assistance, long-term? And what are the neighborhood amenities that make some sense? Obviously, as I said before, I'm preaching to the choir. You're all doing this plus more. Is there something that's a glaring omission here? And I will count to 10 in my head to see if somebody would like to contribute something else. Okay, I'm going to keep, oh, someone's typing. Health status, absolutely, absolutely. So we would consider that, of course, when we're citing housing and what kind of housing we're looking for. Thank you. If anybody adds something later, that's fine, we'll get to it. Let me tell you about the shared housing model, which if you were in Virginia with us, I think I talked to some people about it, and I know I've spoken quite a bit about it with the folks at Boston. We have to screen people with their income. Obviously, if they have no income, they're not really eligible for shared housing because shared housing means the person has to pay out of pocket whatever their income is. So that would be an immediate ineligibility if there's no income. We find a person needs to get about $700 to $800 a month in. So if a person gets a disability check, typically it will work. We want to know their preferences. We want to know their backgrounds because, again, violent offenders are not matched. Want to know their drug use. If they are actively using, it's not a good match for shared housing. It will be a problem. When we prepare that, let me just stop for a moment. Yeah, I see typing. We're all waiting for Jamie here. No, no people with zero income. Let me type that too. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, we do not have people with zero income. The first level of screening is, do they have income, yes or no? No income, it's not the right model. And no income means no entitlements, no, no check from a disability check or something like that, and no work. So that's not going to work. They had a sponsor that wants to pay their rent, that would be fine. But there's not going to be a subsidy. Is not. This isn't necessarily the place for subsidies, because subsidies can go elsewhere. Okay, thanks. We actually have a way that we start screening people, finding people, and funneling them into the program. There's a couple ways we do it. We do a group in our homeless day program, which covers housing and talks about housing, just subjects around housing and housing preparedness. I know that sounds a little weird when we talk about a housing first model, but basically our approach is always housing first, but we do kind of get a sense of where people are, talk about housing, responsibilities, living together, negotiating bills, cable phone. That's for people who are screening in to the program. And then they've already expressed an interest. They already have some income. So now we start covering these things. And this may make a person screen themselves out, covering these details. Okay, housekeeping habits, cooking, things like that. When people are continuing to stay on track, we start matching cohorts. And we typically match cohorts with a systematic way. I believe I'm going to go on that in the next slide. Everybody okay with me moving? I'm going to count to 10. Moving on, I mean. I counted fast. Well, let me go back and talk about this a little bit more, about the matching. I thought I had a slide on it. One of the things that we look at, we have found it's easier to match men together. Women are very difficult to match together. And I think a lot of people will probably have some kind of a reaction when I say that. Some of the reaction will be, I get it, and some of it will be, why? A lot of times men have a little bit more flexibility, and they don't sweat the small stuff as much as a lot of women who have had trauma histories. So anybody who's experienced homelessness probably has some trauma. And women we found a little difficult to match. So the cohorts that we've had so far have been males. And I believe that we're looking at the possibility of a co-ed one coming up. But we do look at them finding, and then when we have found our match, we start working with that cohort a little more closely, and I'm going to get to that a little later. Okay, so why do we choose shared housing? I'm watching for notes. I see something from River Region. I'll wait. Right now, the co-ed one that we're looking at is some specific people, and not one of those people right now is that. But we have no reason that we would not serve LGBTQ in any one of them, because it's matching individuals, and they would have met each other, and everybody would be on board with that. So we wouldn't be disclosing that. We would looking at having our cohorts meet each other, the groups, and then sort of kind of gravitate to where they would be. I think that that's a really great question, because it might really be a good idea to look at that specifically, and thank you for bringing that up at River Region. I really appreciate that. I actually hadn't put that at the forefront right now. I'm waiting for River Region. Oh, yeah. And we do as well. We have not had a large cohort, however. But I really love that you brought that up. They select each other, Amy. They kind of select each other from the groups. And then if we have, say, 10 of them, what we find out about people makes us talk, it triggers us introducing them. Or if we have a vacancy in a multi-bedroom apartment, we would know what the tenants there can handle as far as lifestyle. And lifestyle, I do not mean LGBTQ. I don't mean that. I mean things like, what are your housekeeping things? Do you work? Do you work third shift? Do you do this? Do you have kids? Do you want a lot of visitors? That kind of lifestyle stuff. So I'm going to go back to the subject a little bit more and go to why we choose it, and I'm sure this will resonate with many of you. We choose it because rental subsidies are limited and they're population specific. People don't always want to live alone, and I think that it's been a great mistake to have put so much emphasis on one-bedroom apartments and talking about individuals, because people really do not always want to live alone. Rents are not affordable with limited incomes. I'm preaching to the choir again, and multi-bedroom units are not in as high demand as one-bedroom units. So there are a little bit more to find, and landlords more willing to negotiate. There's a sort of a normalization aspect to this, and I didn't really know how to capture these words in a quick sentence, but I'll tell you the things I meant when I said that. It's people not tied to government assistance. There's an emancipation from sort of the man. It's self-determination. It is owning your own life, and I think that those are, we can't underestimate how important those are to people, and we haven't always brought that up. So I think introducing this model has been giving people hope of, well, I can do it. We set it up where the leases are only 6 months, so that if people are having problems or they don't want to commit to the shared housing model, a 6-month lease is really a great idea. I'm going to give you some more operational things on the next slide, I believe, if I recall. Should I stop for a minute and wait for comments for 10 seconds again? Let me count to 10 and wait. Okay, I'm moving on. Here's how we implemented it here. We hired a person to oversee the program, so there was one person who was the point person. That became the most amazing message to everyone. All of our staff, whenever anyone walked in, we had an immediate feeling of solution. So in our screening for any programs, if people had income and were not on list for housing or we did not see them as eligible, we would walk them right to our shared housing person and set up an appointment so that he could start his screening and also get them into the housing groups, so the housing readiness groups. We also started a housing readiness group in our day program, our homeless day program, which really kind of talked about housing. And again, it's counterintuitive to say housing readiness in one breath and housing first in another, but it was really a way of talking about subjects about housing, like what's been going on. If you had an apartment tomorrow, how would you maintain your rents? And just kind of real talk about those subjects, getting a sense of where people were. And the shared housing coordinator leads those groups, so that's a screening process as well and an assessment process. The group for the day program was required so we could expand access to this program to all people. So we made it a required program that people in our day program, if they came in to do laundry and do the showers and use breakfast and lunch, they would have to attend this group as well, which was not long. It's about 30 minutes. As we said before, people were screened. And that staff person finds landlords, looks at apartments, looks for affordable apartments, and negotiates leases with landlords. I'd like to talk a little bit more about negotiating the leases because I said they were 6-month leases. And we're going to talk more about that on the next slide. But landlords, there is a benefit to landlords with this we have multi-leases per apartment. There is a lease per bedroom. So each person holds his or her own lease, which you can see has lots of benefit to it with people establishing a housing history. And people also, knowing that they don't have to stay more than a long period of time. And also landlords, if one person moves out, they're not losing the whole rent. And we have also looked for ways to bridge those vacancies so that the landlord doesn't hurt at all. We want to have landlords want to participate. And landlords actually like this program. Case management services follow the place people. So case management follows up, and it's typically more short-term because people are housed, but they should see them through the first lease cycle. And then the ongoing referrals come from the day program. They come from outreach. Word of mouth is big. And I don't know if everybody refers to their continuum of care and their access to housing as the coordinated access network, but that's what we refer to it here. That's the HUD language. So we do intakes here through to our coordinated access network to get people screened in. Our staff all conduct those on behalf of the community, as do other agencies, and if we see a viable referral or candidate for shared housing, we march them right into that program. And then with shared housing, which is a targeted housing search, we seek 3 to 4 bedroom units. 3 is really the best number. We negotiate all the utilities included, 1 lease per tenant, 6-month duration leases. Rents are prorated by the size of the bedroom, and we look at that size, the square footage, and look at the, per person and decide who's paying what based on that. So if a person doesn't have that much money, typically they'll take the smaller bedroom. And that was wrong where it says 2 to 3 weeks. The case manager follows up with the tenants about every 2 to 3 weeks. We have had people paying because the apartments are probably running about between 1,000 and 1,400. Like lower end would be 1,000, 1,400 would be a larger number. But if 3 people are there, they're putting out less than $500 a month with all utilities included. While that is certainly not what we look for, having a person spend 30% of their income, it's one bill. And with food stamps and other supports that we do, it's a short-term solution, keeping people out of shelter, or getting them out of shelter, getting them into housing while they build a history, while they are applying to be on wait lists. They're getting on wait lists for Section 8 and other choice vouchers and other subsidies. If they are disabled or elderly, they're putting themselves on those lists. So this is a pathway so a person can be housed as they find a different solution. It also can be permanent housing. It doesn't have to be short-term. And some people opt to stay in it for their lives. There are different versions of this going on throughout Connecticut and probably throughout the country. I'm sure you have seen this. And as I said before, the benefits are that it's affordable, it's non-subsidized. People don't experience the same isolation that they sometimes do. They have supports. We found that they eat better because they cook. And if something goes wrong, somebody says something, that people have less likelihood to get very, very ill and not get care. So these are all like a wonderful kind of community happens that way. And then there are conflicts too. We deal with those. We have people who have, we'll talk about what some of the problems are that we've had. And the landlords benefit because, like I said, if one person's out, it's not the whole rent they're losing, and we usually find some stopgap way to cover that for the landlord. I think at this point, I would like to hear what's been going on that you've known of in your area that sounds like this type of model and what you have done. So I don't know if people want to start making comments, but I'll wait 10 to 15 seconds to start seeing things come in.
And again, if you want to speak, please dial *6 on your phone and that will unmute your line.
I see that someone is typing. That's why I'm waiting.
This is Jamie from Multnomah. We've talked about doing shared housing before as like this big dream in the sky, but between the County Health Department and Cascade AIDS Project, our partner agencies, neither like agency would be able to kind of like be responsible for like the house and the tenants, so we weren't really able to figure out how to make it happen at this point. But I know Maurice Evans, that's really something he's interested in a lot.
You know, I want to say, Jamie, that talking about it is the first thing, so you're really, really partly there. I started talking about it when I've always talked about it because I've done it at different agencies, but when we got here, we've always said there are not subsidies forever. We're going to have to solve this problem a different way. We had this great little opportunity because we had an under expenditure on a grant, and it was like perfect timing. We hired a person with experience, and we put him on as a consultant to get it kicked off, and then we were waiting on another service dollar, on some other service dollars, and we set aside those service dollars that came in to be a person who is the coordinator of the program as a full-time employee. So they will be coordinating not just shared housing, but other non-subsidized kind of housing programs. So we will be able to maintain this program. The consultant we hired, we would have had on forever, except he got accepted into Yale for a master's program, and, you know, he couldn't be available full-time. We thanked him. But I see that, you know, Charlie Peterson has made a note, because I've seen the boarding homes, and master leases, yes.
What is
People
that?
having a roommate. Yep, I've seen that. I think that is a really, that's, I think, where the shared housing started with one of our agencies here with the master leases. So you're all seeing something in your area.
Hey, Sylvia.
Yeah.
Do you mind repeating Charlie's question, just so that I don't know if everyone is able to read it, but
Oh, I thought everybody was reading them, so I will read it. Charlie Peterson made a note that said, in our area, we use boarding homes that are similar. The other program, Master Leasing, starts with people having a roommate, has programming connected with the housing. Eventually, the target is for them to have their own apartment. And that sounds, is that permanent supportive housing, or do they have to leave in a certain period of time, Charlie? Okay, so it could be permanent, and that's, to me, that I think giving the choice to people to not live alone is really great. I see Shannon Terry is typing, so we're waiting to hear her comment. Shannon Terry says, we have shared housing, but it's a mixed bag of incomes, SSI, people working jobs. Yes, that's what ours is too. Some of it is HOPWA funded, but like much of the housing in Houston, it's limited housing shortage. Yes, and I think that you guys in Houston have gotten a little more clever about that HOPWA funding and making it more flexible. Our program only has 3 associated with our program that we work on. Is we have only three subsidies through HOPWA assigned to our program. So I can work with our housing person. That's a great idea. Thank you, Shannon. That was a big help. But I see everybody's doing something. Anybody else? Hooray. That's what Shannon says. Those are great ideas. And ours is a mixed bag of income as well. It is entitlements or benefit checks or people working, and a lot of them are working part-time or consulting jobs or things that don't have, you know, this steady amount of money that they feel comfortable about. So if they're only committed to a few $100s a month, they put it aside, and this is till they get stable. So we have had really, really positive response from people. And I'll give you an example of a cohort that was put together. It was 3 men who all worked, and they didn't make a ton of money, any of them, but they all had sons that are about the same age, and they all wanted their sons to be able to visit them. I think all their sons were like actually 6 or 7, and that turned out to be a very important lifestyle match. So that's working out all right, and the only problem we had there was one of the people has a consulting job, and the job was put on hiatus for a minute, and we had to find some emergency money to cover for him for a month. But, you know, that worked out okay after that. And it wasn't that much money because he had the smallest bedroom. It was only $300 we had to find. So we did. I'm going to move on to the next slide. And tell me, you're going to add to this tips. This is for any housing. Housing search is collaborative. It's you, it's your colleagues, it's the person served, the greatest problem solver, and other providers. And it's really a matter of being on point all the time. You know, it's talking to the person in the line with you at the store. I mean, everybody. I talk to everybody when I'm looking for something. Know your strengths. One of the things our staff have said, some of them feel very uncomfortable talking about money with landlords, and others feel extremely comfortable. Dee Dee. Dee Dee is our go-to when it comes to DeAndrea. She's our go-to when it comes to talking to a landlord and negotiating utilities. And there she is typing right now. But she's our go-to on talk to the landlord and negotiate the lease. She does a great job at that. Thank you, Dee Dee. And she just wrote down, LOL, thanks. No, like I said, know your strengths. And there's nothing wrong with saying I'm not comfortable with that. We know that what we're good at, someone else is good at something else. And I know, again, preaching to choir, always protect private information, tell what people need to know and have permission to do it. Be honest, however, don't tell too much, especially when it comes to, you know, criminal background. We're going to be honest, we're going to tell stuff, but we're not hiding stuff that will get any neighborhood in trouble because we believe community safety is important. But people don't have to know things like, you know, a person is getting methadone, you know. So if a person says, tell me what's going on, we say things like, well, the person is eligible for our case management program. I know I'm saying all the words you all say. And we, you know, we provide supports. We're always here for you. We don't put our funding behind a person we don't think can make it. So that's the kind of stuff that helps landlords look at that. And we really try to keep it safe for the person we serve to be honest with us on what's going on. Building positive relationships with landlords to keep them, that is critical with this model. And if somebody looks like there's going to be a problem, we try to get in there and either get them moved to something else and backfill them with shared housing, or get in before any issues arise that would have any eviction issues. And of course, we all do that. And I'm going to leave this tips, waiting for comments from you, open a little bit. I'll count and wait for your responses. Again, I think as people have said to you, you can unmute and speak by doing *6, or you can write stuff. I don't see typing, and I don't hear unmuting. You probably talked about this yesterday, which is maintaining housing. All we care about is the lease. That, I mean, obviously we care about people's well-being, but our oh, I see that someone from River Region is typing. I'll wait again. what River Region wrote was case managers perform home visits to ensure that the client knows that we're still with them although they have transitioned to housing. And you'll see that on the maintaining housing thing that we'll talk about that a little bit too. Yes, we agree. And River Region is still typing. And to basically keep the morale with the client. And there's still a little bit more typing. There's a couple people typing. Edith says, I believe the tenant handbook reference is available from the housing toolkit. Yeah, I'll talk about that when I get to that bullet. Yes, I want to make sure people can get that and use that as one of their tools if it's helpful. Thank you, Edith, for saying that. And I'm waiting for, Amelia is typing and so is River Region, so I'm waiting for their comments. Okay, River Region said, creating budget to help give the client a sense of independence is one of the things that they do. And I think that you'll see, look at our maintaining housing, look at how we're all on the exact same page. And then Amelia says that here at PATH, Connections Housing, I can't read it because it just jumped. Here at PATH Connections Housing, because it gives us advantage to monitor the resident progress, this is home visits, moving into either supportive or non-supported housing. And Amelia's writing a little more. I think that we all agree, and meaning they live where, okay, they live where you work. Thanks, Amelia, because I didn't quite get it. Yes, okay. So she said yes. Also service plans and goal setting. Hey, look at this. We're all saying the same thing. Okay, Amelia, your program has 3 functions. Oh, and Dee Dee says, we have something like that at Safe Haven, Sylvia. Yes, we do. And I'm waiting for Amelia's 3 functions. These are really, really great contributions on your conversation here, everybody. Thank you so much. Their 3 functions are interim, short-term transitional, and permanent supportive. Okay, great. Those are great ones. So is interim the same as shelter, Amelia? Okay, great. That's a nicer way to use it than shelter, isn't it? What a better word, but I don't know that shelters will move. Yes, it's fluffier. You're right. Amelia says yes, it's fluffier or fluffy. So with maintaining housing, and I think you've seen in our comments here that people are putting in, we're talking all the same thing. With the exception of the medical model, we are looking, well, we're looking at lease compliance in housing stability. And if you look at the lease first, you'll see the things that you have to work on in the service plan. We go over the lease and its provisions with people and explain it to them. They're signing a legal document, and you all know this. And so we want them to understand what they're committing to and what the risks are. If a person, you know, they have to know what it is, because eviction really sticks against your name for a long time. So if they can't commit to that, or they need help understanding how to commit to a lease to maintain housing, we need to work with them on that. Money management, they have to know their obligations. They have to get financial literacy training. They need to understand that and do personal budgets. that is part of what goes over bills and obligations. That's a nicer, a same way of saying it, but just really breaking it out into the functions. We have a tenant handbook that we use, what it means to be a responsible tenant. So if something goes wrong, who they would call, and we give that to people that we serve, and there's a section to put different phone numbers in. So I did submit that a couple months ago, and if we update it again, I will certainly send new versions of it. But let me just see. And then home visits. Actually, service plan includes objectives that relate to lease compliance. Pay your rent. Keep the noise down. Maintain the apartment. Report problems. Don't let people live with you, etc., which is, I think, one of the big things that we end up with people in supportive housing. But in shared living also, you can't be having a bunch of overnight guests that make it untenable for the other tenants. And then home visits, you can never underestimate the importance of going to see people. And we have had a little bit of seeing somebody's typing, but I'll talk about home visits a little bit more. You've really got, and people don't really want you coming to their house, I think, a lot of times. So we've always got to kind of finesse ways to get there. I'm sure you do it, like calling up and saying, let me grab a cup of coffee. I'm in your neighborhood. Let me see you. Or I have something for you, because we collect household items here. So if we know someone needs something, like I have a fan for you. Oh, thank you. What Edith just typed is the tenant handbook is here on MedHeart grantee site, and she's got a link. So if you do that, that might be helpful. And then we also have an obligation with the people that we serve, have kind of an obligation to meet with their case manager or navigator. They have to submit paperwork to keep their housing up. So whatever keeps us knowing their income, they have to be honest about that, and we have to see documentation for ongoing, for them to maintain their housing, and this would be against all forms. So I have kind of covered, I believe, yeah, I just threw one more thing in here, resources and relationships, and this is by no means comprehensive. We have a little blog here in Greater New Haven where if a wait list opens up for Section 8 or Housing Choice Vouchers, we post it. So it's a really helpful thing, and it's a low-tech thing. Anybody can do a blog on Blogspot, and you can get people to join it so that you can share information well. We also are always promoting employment, and we maintain a blog with wherever there are any job fairs going on, any openings we see, and any tools that might help people get employed. We feel that these are important because they go hand in hand. And obviously, your online search sites. Family, friends, coworkers, people in line, anyone who will listen to your voice. Everybody. If you're looking for apartments or you want to know about that vacant one, or do you know about that one in your neighborhood, ask your friends. Drive around and look for rent signs, look for vacancies. Our staff do a lot of driving around, and we talk to other agencies, and the people that we've already placed in housing, they know a lot about what's out there. So I do believe that might be my last slide. Yeah, it is. But I think this is a perfect time to kick in any other tips. And then, Alex and Edith, you think we're kind of there? And James?
Yeah, I mean, if people want to add tips or resources that they know of, or, if you have more questions for Sylvia, now is a great time to ask some questions. We still have about 10 minutes that we can keep going. So if you guys have any questions, now is a great time to ask them. And remember, you can press *6 to unmute your line and speak.
Can I ask you a question? Actually, I have two questions.
Yes.
One is, so you're placing people in a household, in the same household who are HIV positive. I'm sure there are disclosure issues around that. Can you tell us more about how you discuss that topic with people before you house them?
We have not had that come up yet because we actually don't discuss that. That's up to people to share. We don't, I don't know, I guess because none of us hold it as any stigmatizing thing,
okay,
that it doesn't come up as something to share. However, the cohort does become casual and talk to each other, and they may disclose that. That has not come up as an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking more about just, people understanding the importance of someone's health information is their health information, not to be spread around or disclosed, that kind of thing. I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm sure.
Yeah, we don't discuss that at all, and it would not be our role to do that. If we felt people needed to share with people they're living with something about their health condition, because people will see their medications possibly in the house, or something, the same way a person with diabetes may want to say, hey, since we're going to share groceries, I can't eat certain things. I won't be contributing certain things. So I think it comes more of a functional sharing, but we have not had that come up.
Okay. And also, I think it makes total sense to not place sort of violent offenders with one another. But do you?
Or at all. I don't want to live with a violent offender who hasn't been in care and has not got any pattern ending.
Okay, so you don't place violent offenders at all, period.
Okay. For me, and for any of our housing, when it comes to a background that has a pattern of violent offense that is as recent as, the last few months, that's not a person that we can have sharing housing with people, and it's a person that's going to be very hard to place in any housing because landlords will do backgrounds. We will, however, if a person has a history of violent offenses, which many of our folks do, but they are in the past, they have been in treatment, they have been working on the many things that contributed to that, we present that because we know landlords will know that background, and we present it for what it is, that it's the past.
Right.
And so we don't hold any that history against someone. It's just unresolved, unaddressed pattern of continuing or unchanging pattern of violent behavior. That puts our staff at risk as well. And I think that's just that's if a person wants the program, that's an opportunity, a motivation point to help them perhaps look at treatment if they want housing.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I see that River Region is typing, so something has inspired them to contribute something, and I'm very anxious to see it. Or did you? So let's see. Any other questions on the people speaking on the phone who have *6?
I have a question, Sylvia.
Yes.
I'm just out of curiosity, how many people are you guys able to house with your shared housing model?
Right now, we have had 2 cohorts so far, but we have a lot of people waiting to get in. We've had about 12. And because we had an interruption in our staff, and we have 2 houses set up like that right now, and we've had some turnover within them at the 6-month point, but we have a group waiting to get in who have been screened and waiting, but our staffing with a guy going to college, we had to put a stall, so we're going to get back to that wholeheartedly in about a month. We're hiring a person so that we will be all enthusiastic and pushing again, and we will keep you up to date. There had been the person who did the shared housing with us and implemented it here has gotten about 60 people into shared housing, and it's been very successful over the last 2 years.
Wow.
So we know that there is a track record for it that we were building upon, and it was following the same pattern was following here. And I want to read what. Let me read what River Region says. Here at River Region, we go out into the community and speak with the landlords to negotiate rents and discuss specific backgrounds. We've noticed that with an agency, when an agency comes out, it makes them feel more comfortable housing our clients with backgrounds because they know that we're a part of their support system, and we have that same experience that you have over there. So don't see the background as the worst issue. And we've been able to build several relationships with landlords with this process. We literally ride around looking for rent signs and build a relationship with the landlords. Those are great tips.
Hello. This is Louis State Farms in Dallas. I have a question. You mentioned that you had a high staff turnover with the shared housing.
No, we did not have a high turnover. No, we don't have a high staff turnover. We implemented the program in April, and we We did 2 cohorts, and then our person in July got accepted in college and got married and did not come back full-time. We were waiting for funding to continue it as something other than consulting, but we had identified a wait list right now and screened people ready to roll. And we have landlords ready to put together, but we need the staff. It is a labor-intensive thing. So we are posting a job description by Monday, and we believe we have an internal date for this, and we will have a full-time person in within the next 2.5 weeks and be continuing to do the placements. Our organization embraced the model. There was not a hitch in that. People loved it. It's the same way people have said we like that. We also have done shared housing outside of doing it through a one person, like Sarah has matched people on her caseload, and we always offered as an option, would you want to share an apartment? You feel that because you don't have enough income and you don't have a subsidy. So we did not have high staff turnover. We had a person that we thought we would have for a long term, but he got accepted into graduate school in an environmental studies at Yale, and I'm sorry, I got to support him.
Correct. So what is...
Yes, so that will be going, and the person, we have internal candidates who are desperately interested to do that job. So we're not one bit worried about it, and we have funding to keep it forever.
So what initiatives do you take in the program to support your staff working in that environment to help them stay well when dealing with people with multiple challenges and not necessarily be as stable?
No, I think that one of the things that works for us because of the programs, I actually feel that our whole work with MedHeart has helped us to put in some good supports and has moved us to an area where we've been able to build better supports in. I think that we're all very honest with one another and we have each other's back. I think that's one thing that's very important on our team. And Dee Dee and Sarah, please feel free to write something in on this that makes sense to you. But we also have implemented a clinical rounds every Thursday morning, and it's before anything else starts, and that's really about staff education, education about the population, being able to talk about very difficult cases. And we have Lindsay Powell, who is with Yale, who comes here, and she is an APRN with long history working with homelessness and people with HIV and people with serious mental illness. And we also, through our regular team meetings, do that. We're pretty flexible with our staff as well with their schedules, like around when they start and when they end. And if somebody's looking a little bit ragged, they don't have to do certain things. But we really look for people to know themselves a little bit too. So I think our staff is pretty mature that way.
Well, thank you for that. I think that's a great support that you have established. So that's all I had.
Thank you very much. We are very grateful to Yale for offering that. But I will keep you informed about our progress once we fill the position and how many people we place. I will make that an active conversation because this is a model that is taking off. And I've also been writing grants to get money in for upfront assistance for people for reentry. So I've got some money from one of our foundations for some flexible funds for the front end. And we have an application in for bonus dollars for rapid rehousing with a focus on shared housing as well. So we are building a significant, formidable program. It's based on our own experience and the experience that we could garner from the person doing this program model before coming to us because those were true outcomes from the intervention.
Right. Thank you very much, Sylvia.
Thank you.
It looks like we've reached the top of the hour, and so just in the interest of other people's schedules and if you guys have things going on, we're going to have to end the webinar now. But,
thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and thank you for listening to me for that much time. I appreciate all your comments. I learned from you a lot.
Sylvia, we greatly enjoyed having you on the line today and sharing your experience working with the shared housing model and really facilitating this conversation. It was really great. Thank you so much.
I'll keep you informed. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Alex, don't forget to end the recording.